So you mentioned Ayn Rand, and all of Ayn Rand's fiction and philosophy celebrates human achievement. You have called Bitcoin the apex achievement of the human race, and think of it as a living creature. In what way, and how's that?
You know, the human race is, the story of civilization is about harnessing, channeling energy. So it's technical advances that allow us to channel energy. And, you know, and the first most famous figure is Prometheus, right? Prometheus is the, Promethean, right, is its own word, but the mythical figure that actually gave us fire. And, you know, fire is chemical energy, and fire was pretty instrumental in humans rising to rule the world, you know, and there are a lot of good arguments to say it affected our biology. You know, it shortened our digestive tract, it increased the size of our brain. You know, what can you do with fire, right? So many different things. You can defend yourself against animals. You can pre-digest, cook your food. You can heat yourself and avoid freezing to death. You can melt ice. You can clear a forest, right? It's a pretty good idea. And you can't, if we didn't have fire, right? You try to imagine where would humanity be right now, and it would be, it's not clear we would be outdoing the apes. Maybe they would do better than us, you know, if we didn't have that one trick. And now the issue is, what is the significance of Bitcoin and what is the significance of Satoshi? Well, Satoshi is the Prometheus of digital energy. Look, I'm sure, I don't even know if Prometheus ever lived, right? We don't know. It's a mythical character, and maybe there were 10 different human beings that saw fire, but once we figured it out, we kept it, and that's stretched out over millions of years. So it really is, you know, kind of mythical in nature. Well, Satoshi is kind of mythical character as well, but what did Satoshi do? Satoshi figured out how to manifest something of value in cyberspace forever and transfer it without the intermediary. So what does that really mean? If you can put $1 of value in cyberspace, you can put $1 billion of value into cyberspace. And if you put $1 billion, you can put $1 trillion. And in the last 15 years, we put 1.3 trillion. Well, there's $900 trillion of traditional wealth in the world. We have opened a portal. Satoshi opened a portal, a technique, and we started seeing economic energy moving from the analog world and the traditional world, the physical world, the analog world, into the digital world, to a pure digital representation. And that's like putting payloads in orbit, right? Like I put a satellite in orbit and it circles the Earth forever. I put a satellite almost in orbit. How long can you fly? Oh, 15 hours, and then your plane crashes. So almost in orbit is 15 hours, and in orbit is 15 billion years, as far as we know, right? So there's a pretty big difference between putting something in outer space versus putting it in space. And there's a big difference between putting something in cyberspace versus leaving it in real space. J.P. Morgan said he said gold is money, everything else is credit. What he meant was, if I hand a bar of gold to you that's worth $1 million, you have $1 million of gold. But if I hand you a check that has $1 million written on it, you have an IOU. And if you go to the bank to cash the check, there may not be any money in the bank. You may not get your $1 million. But if you have the gold, you have the gold. The gold is the bearer instrument. It is the object. The check is monetary information. The gold is monetary energy. One of them is conservative. I gave you the gold bar. I don't have the gold bar. The check I wrote to you for $1 million, and you walked out of the room, so I wrote him $1 million check. And then I wrote him $1 million check. And then I wrote another $1 million check. And now I'm a banker. I wrote $10 million of checks. I only have $1 million. I ask for 5% interest in each one. I maybe make myself $500,000 a year in interest off of money that doesn't exist. And I maintain, that's called fractional reserve banking. And I maintain, that illusion as long as I can. And when the illusion finally comes crashing to earth, right, all of my creditors are bankrupted, right, and the economy collapses. So Satoshi finds a way to put money in cyberspace. Bitcoin is money. Everything else is credit. Everything you ever process is a digital payment on a computer. When you use Apple Pay or Google Pay, or when you used your banking account, you weren't moving money, you were moving credit. And the problem with credit is an IOU. An IOU to who? It's actually an IOU to a stack of counterparties. Basically, for you to cash that check, you need to get the local bank, the correspondent bank, the central bank of the country you're in, the central bank of the other country, the correspondent bank in the other country, and the issuing bank, and they all have to concur. And then the person that actually transferred, they have to not decay or reject the transaction. So sometimes there's 7 intermediaries that might actually represent a credit risk, or might actually be a credit default to you. And any one of them can default on their obligation. Now, how long does it take for that to settle? It might take 45 days. So when I tell you I sent you money over the internet, I told you I make a representation, it's an IOU, you won't know whether you have the money for 45 days. Now, what's the problem with that? Well, what if you slammed into a brick wall, but you didn't know you hit the brick wall until 45 days after the collision? What happens to creatures that have no pain receptors? Right? You get squeezed out of the gene pool, generally, because there's no feedback. So the problem with the world today is cyberspace is corrupted by its non-conservativeness. We have too much information. The information is toxic. All of the signals in cyberspace are toxic signals because there is no cost to do anything. What Satoshi gave us was a money, but the money is energy, and the energy is matter, and the matter creates substance, and the substance creates friction. And friction isn't a bad thing. Friction is air resistance, but friction is how you walk across the floor here. If I take the friction away from the floor, you'll fall and hurt yourself. You need the friction. Now, what's a practical example of this? Well, most of the signals, a lot of the signals in cyberspace right now are toxic or misleading, criminal, not even real. On YouTube, every 15 minutes, there's a fake Michael Saylor Bitcoin giveaway video spun up, and it looks like me, and I'm talking, and I'm telling you that you have just a few minutes to send me one of your Bitcoin, and I'll send you 2 back. And I give you a little barcode. Okay? Every 10 minutes we scan for that, and we then report it, and we get one taken back, but then they keep putting them up. And they put up thousands and thousands of them every month, sometimes tens of thousands. So you've got continual attacks in cyberspace from what we'll call demons, right? If I'm an evil genius, I can come up with all sorts of bot attacks that attack your website, attack your product, attack your service, and you end up with, catfishing, you end up with, with intelligence attacks. It's, one of the interesting things I've observed, using social media is oftentimes I post something and the most toxic responses were actually not even people. You would have 97 bots that would post inflammatory responses or attacks in order to get me angry or to get my followers angry. And I would watch real people arguing in cyberspace with bots. And I'm thinking, like, They spun that up in a few milliseconds, and they have 10 million of them operating, and you're a real person and you're arguing with the machine. How's that going to end? Right? And I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but you can imagine if you wanted to actually bring the society to its knees, you would have leftist bots that are attacking those on the right, rightist bots attacking those on the left, people of one race attacking people of the other race, and you would just sow racial division, class division, ethnic division. You would go and act like a male insulting females, act like a female insulting males, make them all hate each other, and just crank up the gain, right? And just step out of the way and let them all kill each other. You could have a situation where 99.99% of the population loves each other, and I just introduce a machine, right? And the machine goes and just sows dissent. So how do you avoid that, right? And that takes us back to Satoshi. If you want to build something of beauty in cyberspace, you have to introduce matter and energy. You have to introduce truth and consequence. You have to introduce the idea of time. And we never had a way to do that before. And Bitcoin is the first chance, is the way for us to create something that's real. I can create an actual material wall. I can create a wall that says, you want to go through this wall, you have to post $10. I can create a wall that says, you want to go through this, it'll take you this much time. I can put a time barrier. I can put a capital barrier. I can say, you want to come into my home, you have to place a deposit of X, $20 worth of money. But I only want to be in your home for 187 milliseconds. Okay, post it, come in, and leave 188 milliseconds later, and I give it back to you. Okay, now, how do you do that with a credit card? You can't, because most of the world doesn't have a credit card. But if you did, the credit card doesn't settle for 30 days. How do I actually have a 187 millisecond transaction on something with a frequency of once every month? It's like, and if the transaction fee is 2%, well, that means when I do 50 transactions in 16 seconds, I've lost all my money, right? So Tesla, who is truly a great figure, he said, if you want to understand the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. Vibration is the transformation of one form of energy to another form of energy. When I pluck a guitar, when I pull it to here, it's potential energy, and when I let go, it's kinetic energy, and it's either in a state of high potential energy or high kinetic energy, just like this pendulum, right? Potential, kinetic, potential. This is the vibration. And the vibration is the rate at which that energy is transforming itself through phases. We're hearing it, right? And when you hear it, it's music. And when you hear the vibration and harmony, it's beautiful music. And the human being is gifted with the ability to sense this music, right? Frequency. We hear the frequency. Let me tell you how powerful it is. I have a parrot. That's 18 months old. The other day, someone started playing Bob Marley reggae music, and the parrot started dancing and got happy. Okay? How is it possible that a parrot evolved over millions of years all of a sudden decides he likes Bob Marley music? It didn't go to music school. You think that energy, frequency, and vibration don't change things? When parrots actually react to music, and the 6-month-old parrots also react to music, what that's telling you is that it is genetically coded in our DNA, and the DNA is resonating and vibrating with the frequency of the universe, over the course of millions and millions of years. And so now the question is, how are you going to put energy into cyberspace, right? How are you going to vibrate it at a certain frequency? And our world before Satoshi is built on no energy. It's built on credit. It's built on shadows, on ghosts, on disembodied spirits. It's not built on real things, real matter, real energy. The things in cyberspace are dead. They're dead, shadowy representations of something that was real, is real. There's a real thing in the real world, but the thing in cyberspace is a dead thing. It's a reflection of the real thing. Satoshi let life into cyberspace, and energy is life. Life feeds off of energy, and if you want to create things of beauty, right, then you have to be able to release the energy, and then the energy has to start to evolve. What's the frequency of that digital credit? 30 days. Let me say it differently. 10 times a year. Okay, we're not talking 10 hertz. 10 hertz is 10 times a second, right? We're talking. There's not even a word for how slow that is. We think once every 6 weeks we can vibrate. Well, you ever listen to Beethoven's Seventh Symphony or play a trumpet or a guitar or a piano, right? A440, you know, right? The rate at which the economy runs on 20th century rails with analog assets and credit.
At the Atlas Society, we've set out to engage 1 billion young minds with the ideas of Ayn Rand. You can help by tapping that subscribe button, and don't forget to give this video a like below.